Do I like Faye? Hi everyone, my name is Brittany from Brittany Loves Reading, and it's time to start a new weekly themed reading vlog. Normally I start on Sunday. Today is Saturday because tomorrow I'm reading Ice Planet Barbarian all day long with Leandra on sprints. So I won't be able to start the vlog tomorrow, so I figured I'd start it a day early. This month I am participating in Realmathon and I am on Team Shadow. And for this week and this vlog, I am taking some inspiration from that team and reading books with the word shadow in the title. So for the first book that I'm going to do, I'm going to start with Sanctuary of the Shadow by Aurora Asher. This book I know very little about. I bought it because it was pretty. That's pretty much it. I bought it because it had pretty sprayed edges. It has a really beautiful naked hardback and really pretty end pages. So that was why I bought the book. That's the only reason. This is it. But I have read the synopsis since, and I know it follows someone who has magic and works at a circus and uses their magic as part of the act in the circus. That is the extent of my knowledge on this book. So I know it has not had the best reviews because I did look it up on Goodreads and it has a pretty low rating on Goodreads. However, I don't think that many people have read it. So I think it might just be underrated. I'm hoping that's the problem. Fingers crossed. We'll see. I also think this might technically be fantasy romance, which is not typically a favorite genre of mine, but all the fantasy romance books are always so pretty. That's an aside note though. So I'm going to jump into this and hope that I personally love the magical circus so that I can keep this pretty book on my shelves. But this is the perfect Team Shadow book as well, because not only is it mostly black, but it also has a building on the cover. So like, as much as it also has shadow in the name, it works for a lot of things for my team as well. So I'm gonna go get started on this and I will check in with you probably tomorrow because I will have read some of this today in between reading Ice Planet Barbarians all day. So yesterday I made it to 47% of Sanctuary of Shadow. I'm not hating it. There is definitely a lot of things that are missing in this book though, but like some of the things I am interested in. The world system and this magical circus and who everybody is at the magical circus, interested. This romance, not working for me. And the explanations of things are severely lacking. So in this book, we follow Harrow. Harrow is at this magical circus. She is believed to be a human, but she is actually an elemental. And the humans look down on these elementals and they kind of don't want them to be around. And the circus is kind of like a safe place for the elementals to be. Now, why Harrow is hiding inside a circus with all elementals is not fully explained. There's a little bit of a backstory, but the backstory is barely touched upon. And so apparently Harrow is the last like living seer. The seers were killed by something called Race, who worked for, I think, a queen, and Harrow is the last surviving one. So that's kind of why she's hiding, but like I'm not still quite 100% sure why that's the case. Anyway, this does have elemental magic, which I will say, we've read a lot of books about elemental magic. We all have if you read fantasy books. So I don't think necessarily the fact that it's not explained well is a huge hindrance to the book. I wish it was explained more, but elemental magic in general is fairly understandable. However, in this book, we have some things around elemental magic that are not necessarily typical of elemental magic, such as Harrow being a seer. She uses water to know the future, and that I don't understand. Also, there are things called hybrids. So there's like animal elemental mixes. And again, not really explained how that occurred or what they are or how it works or anything like that. The world building and the political system is very quickly touched upon and then moved on. So I know that there are queens. I know that the seers were killed and that's about it. The explanations of who everybody is, questionable. There's someone called the Fury. I have no idea who they are. Not a clue. I know that they exist, and I know that they're somehow connected to the murder of all of Harrow's people and family, but like other than that, I have no idea. So there are a lot of plot holes in the explanations of this book. Now, I did tab a quote, which I am going to go to right now because this was the moment to give me an info dump. And I'm not a fan of an info dump, but like it would be better an info dump than no explanation at all. And this is about Rafe, our main character, and he frowned at the mention of water and she debated explaining it, but decided not to. And I feel like that's a really main plot point for this book, is that we debated explaining it and we decided not to, and I would like you to explain it to me. Now let's get to this romance. Rafe is sold to this circus. He is imprisoned. He is thought to be a wraith, one of the creatures that killed the seers for the queen. And Harrow is not convinced that he is a wraith. He is also like the creature wraith, but because they spelt the name of what he was on his sign at the circus wrong, he also goes by the name Rafe. So he is wraith and is a wraith. That may become confusing as I talk to you about it, but it is what it is. Now, due to the nature of wraith, he does not speak much. And when he does speak, it's usually in just a couple of words. He doesn't necessarily always talk in full sentences. He does sometimes talk in full sentences, so he can, but he doesn't. And we do later discover why that is the case. However, I have read books similar where there is kind of a communication gap in our romance, and I never like that because it just feels uncomfortable to me. And this went on for quite a while before we understood why he could not communicate well, and I did not like it. I did not like it. And the book that it reminded me of, where I have seen that and did not like it, which is really interesting, so follow me here, is Ice Planet 4. Ice Planet 4 follows Harlow and Rohash. This follows Harrow and Rafe. Did our author read that book? Because the romance is very similar and the names are very similar. So I'm kind of wondering if there is some inspiration from one book to the other because the romance is very similar. I'm not here for the romance. The smut is not great, but I am interested in this magical circus. So there is a lot that I have critiqued in this update. So I think you can kind of guess where I'm falling at this moment in time. I am going to continue though, because I am intrigued to see if anything is explained as we go through the book, how it wraps up, kind of how this romance shakes out in the end. But that's where I'm feeling it right now. What I want right now is more explanation of the magic system and the world building. I don't think I'm going to get it based off the reviews I've seen, but that's what I would like to see. I don't think the romance is going to be fixed in my mind because I think just this language gap and this information gap isn't working for me. But that's it for me right now. Today I'm reading Ice Planet all day. It's funny that I have Ice Planet on the mind from this and I'm going to be reading Ice Planet all day, so I'm not going to be reading Sanctuary of Shadow. So we'll see what happens tomorrow when I have to pick this up if I feel like picking it up. This will be a good test of whether I feel like picking this up or if I'm forcing myself to pick this up on Monday. But I have to go. I have to go get on sprints with Leandra for Ice Planet, but I will talk to you when I finish Sanctuary of Shadow. So I finished Sanctuary of Shadow last night on Patreon sprints. This was not great. And I think you kind of understood that from where I was last time I talked to you. There were parts that I did like about this, the circus part. However, that was a very small part of this book. I even mentioned to a few people who I was talking to who kind of got bought in because of this magical circus idea. And if that's why you're picking up this book, don't. Because the magical circus is such a small part of this book. They are there for a handful of chapters, and even then, it's mostly Rafe in captivity, and you don't actually see the circus. So I feel like some of the lower ratings may be due to the fact that this was pitched as a magical circus and people did not really get a magical circus. And I could see why that would disappoint some people. It didn't necessarily disappoint me, although as I read the book, I was excited to see more circus and would have loved to seen it. However, I didn't know this was a magical circus when I bought it. So I didn't go in with that expectation until after I already bought the book. There were so many moments where I just wanted more. I wanted more explanation. I wanted to be told what was going on and the backstory to so many things. And we would get glimpses into the backstory of these queens and this world, but it was in such small doses that I never really felt like I got a full comprehensive view into the parts of this book that I was most excited to see. The ending was very rushed, and I did not love how it ended, unfortunately. And I think this is the first in a series, but it definitely didn't leave on a cliffhanger. I'm not even really sure what the next book would be. I don't know what's going to be next, and I don't think I'm going to be continuing. I'm going to give this 2 stars. That's unfortunate, but it is what it is. I do think I might keep it though, because it's just so pretty. I just might keep it because it's so pretty. So if you see it on my shelves and you're wondering why it's there because I didn't like it, it's because it's pretty. And I want to display pretty books, even if I don't like them. And maybe that's a toxic trait of mine. Maybe I should unhaul it because I didn't like it and I will never reread it. And maybe I will at some point, but it's just so pretty. And that's all I'm going to say, because in the middle update, I definitely said a lot of things. So I think you understand where I'm at with this book. The next book for this vlog is The Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. This is a translated work that has been on my shelves for a little while. It is historical fiction with a magical realism component. And all that I know about it is really what's on the back of this book. So it's hidden in the heart of the old city of Barcelona is the Cemetery of Forgotten Books, a labyrinth library of obscure and forgotten titles. And this man takes his 10-year-old son there and he picks out a book and it kind of starts them on an adventure. So I know this is magical realism. It's a book about books. These were the two reasons that this ended up on my shelves. I feel like I got it at a thrift store. I think I saw it and like knew of the title and knew that it was a book about books. And the idea of like this cemetery of forgotten books was really interesting. It does have the word shadow on the title. And it does have buildings on the cover, so that's going to work really well for Team Shadow as well, because if you look really closely, these are buildings here on the side of the book. So it doesn't give me points for black cover, but it does give me points for building on the cover. And she's chunky, so it'll give me some good book page points. But I need to go read this. So I'm going to get this started this afternoon and also read it tonight on Tuesday night sprints, and we'll see how far I go. I also need to go to the grocery store today, so I may take you along with me to do that. I need to get a few things, do a little bit of a fill, and I'll take you along for that probably if I remember to vlog. We'll see.
If you thought that you loved me, well, trust me, you didn't. The proof's in your lies and your toxic decisions.
Okay, friends, I hate to do what I'm about to do, but I'm going to DNF The Shadow of the Wind. There are reasons, and it's not because there aren't parts of this book that I'm interested in, because there are parts, but they are not enough to get me to continue. So let's chat about it, because I do feel really bad about this. Not so much about DNFing a book. If a book is not for me, you know what, let's move on. Let's go to something else. But this vlog, I feel bad that I have two books that I didn't like. I always want to go into vlogs to make a positive reading experience. But sometimes, you know, I go into books hoping I like them. I hope that I will enjoy them. I've usually done some research that would lead me to believe that I will like them. Even this, I really did expect to like this. So, you know, I go in assuming I'm going to like books. But sometimes we pick up a book and it's maybe not the right time, or maybe it's not the right book, and we have moments of a 2-star read and then a DNF. Hopefully the last book in this vlog will bring it home for us, but it's the one that I probably know the least about because it's on my Kindle. It's not even a book that I physically own, but that's okay. We're going to hope for the best, but let's talk about this one first. So for Shadow of the Wind, I really did like the mystery that surrounds Daniel in this book. So Daniel, at the age of 10, goes into the Cemetery of Forgotten Books, gets to bring a book home, brings home the book called The Shadow of the Wind, falls in love with this author who is Julian Carax, and wants to know more about the author, wants to read more works by the author, cannot find anything. And there seems to be somewhat of a mystery around that. Like, where are all this author's books? He's published a few, only about 1,000 copies of each, but you should be able to find it, and you can't. And we meet a man who's trying to buy them up to burn them. And we only meet him for a second as of where I am. I made it to page 127. I don't think I told you that. And I'm just not going to continue from that point on. But we have met this gentleman who is trying to get these books and burn them, and we don't really know why right now. We're starting to kind of figure out why, but not wholly. So all of that was really, really interesting, and I was intrigued in that storyline and what was happening with that part of the book. We follow Daniel for a very long time. So even where I am in the book right now, I think Daniel is about 17, 18, 19 years old. We met Daniel at the age of 10. So we follow Daniel through his whole life, and there is still a lot of years to go, and I think we keep up at this pace. So we're going to follow Daniel through his whole life. He keeps meeting people in his periphery. He keeps bringing new people into his kind of realm of knowledge. His father's friends are there, and there's a lot of men in this book. And there are a lot of aside comments during the dialogue around appearances of women, talking about women, and the way women are portrayed in this book is not okay for me. Even some things that have happened around a couple of female characters in this book, which there are barely any female characters in this book. It's very male centric, which is okay. There doesn't need to be female characters in the book, but the few that are in here and the way they're portrayed as of 127 pages, obviously that is all that I've seen, is not something that is making me feel good. It's making me feel uncomfortable. And those aside comments really have just taken me out of the story every time it's happened. They're not all the time. They're not throughout the entire book, but there's enough of them in here and enough in the 127 pages that I've read that it made me go look at reviews of this book. This book has a lot of high reviews, a lot of them. So keep that in mind. A lot of people do love this book, but I did go look at kind of the lower end and saw a lot of people saying that there were a lot more of those comments upcoming and that it doesn't really stop. And that just kind of made me realize this wasn't going to get better for me. So it was just best to stop. Don't push my way through another 400 pages because this book is very large. Maybe put myself into a slump or really be, not wanting to pick up a book. I did not want to pick it up today. I did not. I got this far on sprints last night and I did not want to pick this up today. So that was kind of a sign to me of like, you know what, there's not even enough in here that's making me want to continue forth. And I just want to say what I'm feeling, because I know a lot of people, when I put this on the Timmy's TBR, was like, oh, that's on my TBR. I can't wait to see your thoughts. And my thoughts are not great. The mystery is good, but those aside comments, which, like I said, they're not through the entire book, but there's enough of them at a pretty regular frequency that I was just like, and every time it happened, pulled me out of the story, and I'm going to DNF it and move on from here. So like I said, the last book I actually have on Kindle. I was looking for a third book for this vlog when I was planning it out because I didn't have anything on my shelves that had the word shadow in it. So I was looking at like Stuff Your Kindle stuff, KU stuff, and found Mist and Shadow. And I forget the author's name, and I forgot to bring my Kindle down here. So it's on the screen and you'll know from there. And because I found it that way, I know very little about it. But I do have a couple of friends that did read it, and I did kind of peruse the reviews without looking at spoilers. And one thing that was mentioned was that there was a lot of world building in this, which is typically what I miss in romantasy. So I have high hopes that because there is a lot of world building in here, I'm for it. It also had a lot of political things happening, which I also really like, and it was labeled as a slow burn. So I think the romance is not as heavy in this as maybe some of the fan rows that I have read in the past, which makes me think that I might really like this. I'm really hoping we end on a high note. Please let me end on a high note. We're going to go read this, and I will read a little bit, and then I'll come back and actually tell you what it's about, because honestly, that's all I know. I can't even think of the author's name right now, but it's on the screen, and I will tell you the author's name in the next clip. But it's right there, so let's dive in and read this book. Dare I say that we have potentially found a winner? I think we may have. At 30%, I am really having a great time with Of Mist and Shadow. This book is by Jenna Wolfhart. I know I could not think of the author's name when I was last here, so I wanted to mention that. It is a lot darker in the start of this book than I necessarily anticipated going in, so please check trigger warnings. There is definitely a dark presence in this book at the beginning, just due to the politicalness of this book. And also the king that is currently ruling this area is very, very cruel to the humans in his regime. So in this book, we follow Tessa. Tessa is a human, and she lives in this landmass that is closed off from the rest of the world by a mist. So in this world, King Oberon is the king of this little section, and the Mist King basically closed them into this. And we don't really know exactly why this has happened. There's these two ruling factions, the people outside of the mist who are ruled by the Mist King, and the people inside who are ruled by King Oberon. Both of our kings are fae, so keep that in mind. Tessa, however, is a human. There is a very small population inside the mist. It does not seem to be very big. And every 75 years, the king picks a human woman to be his bride. And she really does not have a say in the matter. It's very cruel. King Oberon is a very cruel king. When she is picked, she's not allowed to say goodbye to her family. She's just taken away to be his bride so that he can bear heirs. Because for some reason, the mist has caused the Fae not to be able to produce their own heirs. Tessa is working with something called the Rebellion. And the Rebellion are people outside of the mist trying to come and help the people that are inside the mist. And there are people inside the mist that are trying to kind of enact against the king because he is so cruel to people. And basically, if you don't do what he wants, he will kill you, kill your family, torture your family. It's a very cruel existence. Tessa is, like I said, helping this rebellion by gathering these gemstones in this cave at the beginning of the book. Tessa thinks she knows what the gemstones were for. Later, we kind of figure out a little bit more, and I'm going to leave that because it's a little bit later in the book, so I'm not going to go too in depth in that. But basically, she's gathering these gemstones when she is discovered by the king. The king, however, lets her go. And that's very strange because you would think he's this cruel, evil king. Obviously, he's going to do something to her, and he does eventually. She thinks she's gotten away, and then she finds out he has chosen her to be his next queen. This is not a good thing. This is not a Beauty and the Beast thing, y'all. He is cruel. He is horrible. He is the worst of the worst. And she is there. She is about to become the queen. Things happen around her, to people around her, to people she loves. And she is now forced into this existence. Now, remember, she was working with the rebellion at the start of this book, and she was working with someone called the captain, who's outside in the mist, but they communicated through magic. There are also people inside the palace and things that are also part of the rebellion, kind of biding their time. And they do help Tessa escape. And when she escapes, she finds out that the person she has always thought of as the captain is actually the Mist King. This is all in the synopsis, so I'm not spoiling anything. And he is actually the Mist King, and she has always been told the Mist King is just as bad as King Oberon. So she's a little bit confused right now of he was helping me and he is helping me, but I've always been told that he is just as bad, that he kind of locked us into this area with this evil king, and it's his fault we were stuck, and various things of that nature. So she's really trying to figure out what is the truth with this Mist King. Is he good? Is he evil? What is he really to her? And that's really where I am right now. To be honest, I don't really know how it's going to enact further. I'm just at the point where Tessa has gotten out and is starting to have interactions away from what she's always lived and what she's always been told. So obviously, things she heard in the mist may or may not be true because they were told by this evil king. And obviously he's telling what he wants people to think, but is that the truth? And being secluded, she really has no way of knowing. And now that she's out, she can kind of start sorting through the information and finding the needle of truth within. And that's where we are right now. And I'm having a great time. I really am enjoying this book a lot. And I'm excited to get going because now we're really just getting into the meat of the book. The first 30% was really showing us what Tessa's life was and getting Tessa out of it. So now we're into kind of the real meat and potatoes of this book. And I did not want to put it down last night, but I was getting so tired after sprints that I had to stop, and I was like, okay, today I'm going to tackle a lot of it, and that's exactly what my plans are. So I am going to go read this because I definitely did not want to put it down, which is very interesting because this is classified as fantasy romance. Now, I'm not at any romance bit yet, but it is classified as fantasy romance, and it is very political, as you can tell. There's these two kings, there's these two ruling factions, and obviously I just enjoy a political fantasy. But also, I have enjoyed another fantasy romance before, and that was A Trial of Sorcerers by Elise Kova. I read that for Rise Reading Corners book club, and I really enjoyed it. And that was Fae. And this is Fae. So the question I'm wondering is, do I like Fae? Like, is that what I like in fantasy romance? Is that a common denominator? Plus a political system that I enjoy? Maybe we found something. Maybe we've discovered what I like in fantasy romance. Political with Fae. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that being my existence. So it's the next day, and yesterday I ended up getting to 68% of Mist and Shadow. And the first part of this book is definitely setting up the political system, the system of these two kings, and also this world of the mist. So there's like this mist that's holding everybody in, and there's creatures in the mist, and we're learning all about that. So this is classified as fantasy romance, and for most of this book, there is no romance. There's a little bit of like eyeing each other, but they are still not sure of each other because Tessa is really not sure what is going on and who to trust and what is true in her situation. So she's still figuring it out. So yes, she finds Kaelin attractive, but she is not sure whether she wants to trust him or not. And I don't even really think she's quite come to that conclusion yet anyway. Kaelin is quite obviously our romantic interest because he's the only other POV in this book. So it's quite obvious that that's kind of where we're headed. Kaelin is technically the Mist King, and we do have perspectives of Kaelin. However, I wish there were more of them because most of the perspectives are Tessa's. We have a Kaelin perspective every 4 to 5 chapters. The rest are Tessa's. And because Tessa lived within the mist for so long, and because she only knows what the other King Oberon told her, she does not really have a full comprehensive view of what is happening. So we only get tidbits of that as Kaelin tells her, or as we find it out in Kaelin's perspective. And I really wish we had more of Kaelin in this book so that I wasn't constantly feeling behind on what is going on, what is true. Because I'm with Tessa, I only know what Tessa knows. And I would like to have more of a split in the perspectives so that yes, Tessa is figuring it out, but maybe I know a little bit more. We have just hit the point where there is finally some movement in the romance other than like seeing each other or being like, oh, he looks cute with his shirt off, you know, that kind of stuff. We're finally starting to get to the romance now. It literally just happened, and I'm about to continue from that point. So I haven't really seen enough of the romance to really have a good feel about how that's going to fit into the book. But as of right now, I just wish I knew more about the world. It's not that there are necessarily plot holes, it's just because I am from Tessa's perspective and I only know what Tessa knows. And I just wish we would see more from Kaelin because Kaelin knows all the things. Kaelin knows what's going on. And I just wish I spent more time with him. Maybe there is more of him in future books because this is a series. I can only go off what I've read so far, and I would just like more of that and a little less from Tessa's perspective. And that's really all I have to tell you. That would be my thoughts at this point. Those are really my only thoughts. So this is going to be a very quick update on the 38% that I read yesterday, and I'm going to finish this book today. That is my main goal for today. That, and I'm starting to redo my shelves. But this is going to be a multi-day project. I'm not taking this all on in one day. So I'm probably basically done what I'm going to be doing, which is kind of why I'm coming to talk to you. I'm like, okay, now it's time to read. But before I read, I need to tell them what I thought of what I read yesterday. So now that I've done that, I can go read. I can go see where this romance is going. And then I can report back to you at the end of the book. So I finished Of Mist and Shadow. And the end of this book, wow. I thought I knew what was going on, and the author was like, no, you don't. You have no idea. Let me destroy what you think is happening because what you think is happening is not what is happening. And I can't tell you anything about it because it would all be spoilers, but I am definitely going to be continuing with this series. Is this series doing anything super new for Fae romance? No, not really. But I really enjoyed the writing style. I really enjoyed the plot and the characters. And there were also a few side characters, which, you know, if I love a side character, I can be brought into any book for a good side character. Midnight is definitely one that stood out for me. Midnight is a horse that Tessa gets when she is in the mist. And Midnight, especially in the end of the book, as we get to see Midnight and maybe learn more about Midnight, I really just loved this horse. This horse was so great. But also, I liked Tessa. I'm interested to see kind of where her story goes as we continue through the series and see kind of what happens with Tessa. What happens with this political system between the two kings? Like, I need to know what happens. I need to continue. When, I don't know, but I'm definitely continuing with this series. I ended up giving this one 4 stars, and really, it was my favorite book of this vlog by a lot. But that is the end of this vlog. I read 3 books with shadow in the title. I'm glad we ended on a high note because the first part of this vlog was rough. There was some rough stuff going on in this vlog. But we did read 3 books with the word shadow in the title. Well, we read 2 and DNF'd 1. I'm glad that I read them. I'm glad that I got them off my TBR. And I'm glad that I found a new series that I might really like. But it's time to say goodbye to you and start next week's vlog. Next week, I am doing a challenge video. I really do love doing reading challenges on this channel. They're so fun. And this one may be a bit chaotic. I'm not gonna lie. It could be chaos, but we're gonna have a fun time doing it anyway. But thank you so much for watching this one. If you wanna hang out with me more, my links to Patreon, Instagram, and Goodreads are always linked down below. Chat with me in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.